My name's Kenny Dyal, and welcome to Season 2 of the Scuba Diving Podcast. Regular guest Michael Kest and I are going to discuss checkout dive locations for scuba certification, the impacts they have on the students, especially when it comes to things like doing a checkout dive in the ocean on a boat versus lakes, springs, rivers, quarries, which is, of course, always a contentious debate. Hope you enjoy the show. Okay, well, we were talking earlier about,
You were not talking earlier.
we were talking earlier.
Talking earlier. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, about how there's so much emphasis on the checkout dive and the dive location that everything after seems to get neglected.
Yes, I think the better question, why do so many people get certified and then rarely ever or never dive again? Which is a big problem in the industry. And I think the reason for that is the focus of a lot of dive shops and a lot of instructors is get as many people certified as you can and get them through a class as quick as you can. The problem with that is twofold. Number one, the fact that you're trying to get people through so fast means you're probably not doing a very...
That's number one. I'm just holding up my hand so we don't lose track.
Anyway, no, you're trying to get people through so fast that they're not really getting comfortable in the water, not really getting comfortable with skills. Yeah, technically they may have enough to pass a open water test, do their skills and all that, but they're not comfortable in diving, which means they don't really have a desire to go dive again. The second reason that's a problem is when you're so focused on getting people through and you're doing it again. Second reason it's important is because if you're just focused on that open water class, you're not saying, hey, while we're doing this, let's sign you up for an advanced class. Let's get you nitrox certified. Let's continue that learning while you're doing that. And if you move a little bit slower and they get more comfortable, they go, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. I'll do it, instead of just this stressed out situation, which a lot of open water classes are, which is just pure stress from beginning to end, especially when you're trying to do it in a weekend. I get why the model got there, because a lot of dive shops are like, listen, we got to make money on these. Here's the dirty little secret. You make very, very little on open water classes.
Some shops lose money on
Some shops lose money on open water classes. And so why then try and force people through it really quick on the one thing that you're not making money, instead of try and get people interested so they really want to do this sport? It's bad for business and it's bad for the customer. Instead, do something that's good for business and is good for the customer, which usually goes hand in hand anyway.
So the industry right now, the whole thing is try and get them into an advanced or a nitrox class, which are two certifications every open water diver should get to at some point. But do you think because they're trying to do that versus let's just do another simple dive after? There's always like, hey, let's do the next class. And so it's like, I gotta like fully commit to this or nothing. And if I can't do another long weekend out of town or whatever, I'm just gonna fizzle out. Do you think having some easy, simple, local dives afterwards gets missed a lot?
It does. And I think that goes to the idea, when I'm saying do an advanced class, do a nitrox class, I think the reason, as you said, shops know they're supposed to do this. I mean, this is how they move forward. But the reason it doesn't work is because the shops, instead of looking at it as, hey, we want you to do these classes because we want you to get more comfortable. We want you to be better divers. They do it as, hey, this is how we make more money. You're a dive shop. You're supposed to make money. And I'm not saying you're not supposed to be doing that, but if the focus is on making the money, it's like in any business. If the focus is on making the money instead of making a better product, it's not going to work out the way you want it to. So instead, as you said, you tell someone, hey, look, this is why you want to do an advanced class. This is why you want to do a nitrox class. You can use that while you're in the open water class, but you can also say, listen, before we do that, come on a quick dive with us. Let's go down, to the Keys for a weekend. We'll just do 30-foot dives. That's all we're gonna do. Go down for a weekend, enjoy that. Or,
this
do a
is where Mike
dive.
tries to get him to come and then hold his lobster bag for him. Oh, and we can count these 6 for you too.
Yeah, well.
So he can double his loot.
Kenny doesn't need people to hold his lobster bag because it's relatively light since there's nothing in it.
This was coming. You know what? That's fair. That's not my forte. I'll give it to you.
Anyway, no, but the whole point, or go to a spring or say, hey, do these shallow dives, get used to it. Usually when they become comfortable, they want to go farther. They want to say, hey, what else? I heard my friend was going and doing, the corridor down in West Palm, but it's 100 feet. If I'm going to do that, I want to, number one, get more experience, and number two, I want to have more time down there, which is the nitrox, stop it. And see, I got 3 up, and I just already put the 3 up. And number 3, if you get your advanced class, it teaches you to get a little bit deeper there. But again, even if you're not doing those extra classes, those extra dives make all the difference in the world. And the dive shop ought to be finding ways to make those other dives relatively cheap. Like going up to the springs, there's very little cost in going up to the spring. For new divers, it's something cool to see for the first couple times. And
That's a perfect segue.
yeah.
So I want to talk to you about something that you and I sort of disagree on. We were just talking about springs. You prefer the ocean, like drifts, reefs, and everything, which I do too. There are a lot of people who absolutely, that's where they love spending their free time. They love springs. They like the serenity. They like the fact that they're not worried about current. A lot of people enjoy the springs. They like the serenity. They like the guaranteed element that you can go out there. You don't have to worry about weather. You don't have to catch a boat. You don't have to worry about getting seasick. Any of those things that some people, that really puts them off to diving.
The question you were getting to is it necessary to do your checkout dives in the ocean?
Hold on. Well, the ocean's a little bit...
That's where you were going with this.
That's where I was going with it, but
Yes.
ocean's different. We're talking a very popular spot, which is southeast Florida, the Keys. You have current, you do get some waves. You got to move quickly out there. It can be rough. We've seen a lot of open water divers go out there, get seasick, get tossed around a little bit, and it was just a little too much, a little too quick for them. It turned them off to diving completely. Now, if it goes good and it's smooth and it's good viz, it can be like the most epic experience of their lives. And even after their open water checkout, you got a diver for life.
Right.
Or you could literally smother that flame.
Yep, and you lose it that day.
So my opinion changed on this. I used to, because in Florida, everyone's, hey, you need to do a boat dive so you're capable of that. And I agree with that. I have two little hang-ups with that. One is there are a lot of people who are perfectly fine, not a lot, but enough that are perfectly fine never going into the ocean. They'll do springs, they'll do lakes, they'll do quarries, river drifts, whatever. There are a lot of people that are okay with that. And so you are certified without ever going into the ocean, or you can be certified without ever going into the ocean. Why not give them that opportunity? Also, when you're in the ocean, doing a drift dive on a reef, say 60-foot reef, you have a lot of urgency. You got to suit up, rocking boat, get in. You have big ascents. You have kind of a strict timeline. Also, you can make that trip down, get a hotel. Waves are too high, you get blown out. So I had a lot of people not be able to get certified in time for a honeymoon cruise or whatever, because you're you're dictated by the weather, and
Right.
the day of.
That's true.
You know, the day of, you can go, wow, what happened? We can't go out. So what I found seemed to work, at least in this
With you,
environment.
it's like 1.5 seas, you're not going out.
Yeah, I'm a baby.
I'm
So I found that if you can get that comfort level up by going to lakes or springs, I find most people just, when they go on the boat dive as their checkout dive, they barely know what happens. They're getting 20 minutes on the bottom. It's a whirlwind, and they still are not quite. They're like, okay, I did it that once. Versus spending that day again just polishing and getting that comfort like saturated in there to where, man, I'm really ready to just take it to the next level. I did a boat dive afterwards. So you're certified now, and you can do the lakes or springs. But if you want to be comfortable on a boat, because your certification card doesn't say boat or not boat, which that's a whole nother segment.
Right.
Probably should be a different certification.
Right.
But it's if you're doing offshore boats, especially on drifts, that's a whole other thing. I would offer that after, okay, you're certified, you can do lakes and springs and everything. But I would offer that and say, come with us, so it's guided, you have instruction. You're not quite as locked in as a student. So if you can buddy up with somebody and keep going if you're having a good time, you already have your card. So if the weather blows out, you can still go do something else. And then they still get that opportunity if they want it. You disagree with that?
I disagree with it to a point. I will say, you make a lot of good points. And that pains me to say that.
That's what I was waiting on.
But you make a lot of good points. Here's the concern that I have. Someone gets certified in Florida, never been in the ocean, only on spring or a river or a lake or something like that. There are so many, everything we just discussed, there are so many differences to it. For instance, saltwater versus freshwater. Number one, you've got a bit of a buoyancy issue. Almost everybody who has ever been just in freshwater, as soon as they go to saltwater, you learn in your open water class that, okay, so you're gonna have a little more buoyancy in freshwater. You're gonna be a little more buoyant in freshwater because it's denser, but nobody really believes it because it's like water's water. No, it makes
You're a little more buoyant in salt water.
That's what I said.
You flipped it.
All right, saltwater. You know what I meant. But nobody believes it because they're like, oh yeah, water's water. It's not gonna make that much of a difference. It makes a significant difference.
Yeah.
And so everybody's floating at the top and they're like, oh, I don't have enough weights and everything. The second thing is there's the waves. Getting used to getting out there and getting in and out of a boat with waves. Third thing is the fact that it is salt water, and if you lose your mask in salt water, it's a different experience than in freshwater. In
It's a little
freshwater,
more burny.
yeah,
So the
chlorine.
mask, it burns more in salt water.
It does,
Yeah,
which is
next
not
point.
which is not a little thing when you're there. The fact that you can get lost in the ocean, like you have to actually pay attention to where you are. Most springs are small enough that you're not going to get lost as long as you're not going down in the caves, which do not do that unless you are trained. That is a really big
Certified.
no. Yes, but yeah, I mean that's another thing. Like it's things you have to be aware of. You know, things like knowing to have a safety sausage at the surface so that if you, or on your gear, so that if you get lost, you can inflate that. Because unless you've been out in the ocean, you don't realize how difficult it is to see someone, even on a flat day. And if there's any waves at all, it's really, really difficult to see a diver out in the ocean. So there's all these things that concern me. Someone who has been certified, has never been in the ocean, goes on a boat without an instructor, they're not thinking about any of these
We've
things.
seen it. It's a mess.
Yeah.
If you're going to do an ocean dive that's out in the real ocean where there's waves, where there's current, 60-foot reefs or more, you should at least do the first one guided
Right.
at a minimum.
Yeah.
Like with an instructor.
Right.
Not just like, hey, I'll carry the flag or whatever.
Right, exactly.
So what do we do though? This is a particular problem in Florida. As soon as you get into North Florida and pretty much everything beyond that,
Yeah.
this isn't an issue. People
Right.
get certified in quarries, springs, rivers, lakes.
But that's also where they do most of their diving too.
Right.
They may go on vacation, but
They go on
majority
vacation,
of
they
it-
go on a cruise, and they're on this boat now for the first time ever.
Right.
Should there be a separate certification for ocean diving on a boat or not? Because if someone can go literally to a lake that's 20 feet deep, 15 feet deep technically,
Yeah.
for 20 minutes, do 5 dives, and they're certified for life.
Right.
That person has no idea what they're doing if they get onto a boat.
True.
Offshore, and they almost become a liability for everyone else. Now,
They
some
do.
people are naturally more comfortable,
Right.
but
exactly.
I mean, just about anybody really is going to be on the struggle bus the first time.
Right, yeah, no doubt. This is kind of where I go back and forth between I know the realities and I know the problems people are going to have versus also the idea of personal responsibility. And that's something that I think really should be honed in a lot more. I've seen a lot of open water classes where they're like, you'll be fine, whatever. There should be a lot more, you are responsible for yourself. We talked about it last time with the buddy teams. A lot of times people rely too much on their buddies. Your buddies should be there for an emergency to help out. They should not be your den mother who is making sure all your gear's ready.
I think-
The reason that's important is I don't think there should be a separate certification because I think there should be a much stronger emphasis on personal responsibility. And when someone gets on a boat, and I will tell you, I worked on a boat as a dive master. It was not a mystery who was comfortable and who wasn't. It was pretty easy to see. Like someone who's sitting there laughing, joking, putting their gear together, they're good to go. I'm not worried about them. Someone who is nervously trying to make sure they get everything together, it was night and day, someone who was not comfortable and who wasn't. And so we would automatically go, okay, let's talk to this person, see if they're okay, see if they need someone to watch them, all that. There were times when we had to make a call and say, listen, we want y'all to dive with us today. And usually this didn't happen until you're out on the boat because it takes a little while to talk to them and
Kind
understand.
of see what's going on.
Right. And we would say, listen, if you're going to go in the water, we're going to have to put a dive master with you, which is going to cost a little more. If you decide you don't want to dive, that's okay. We're not going to charge you for it. 95% of the time we did that, and it wasn't that often. So, let's say 1 out of every 10 times we did that, someone would be like, that's not fair. I don't need a dive master or whatever. The other 9 times, the person was like, oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. I was nervous.
A lot of people are nervous to ask
Right.
about, that brings me to another point. The people that I've found, and I know a couple instructors who do this, their checkout dives are on a boat in West Palm. You got waves, you got drift, it's 60 feet, you got current, drift. And it is pretty intense for your first open water dive,
Right.
unless it's just perfectly flat, which is rare.
Right.
And little current. Most of the time it's a load on people, and I've found that those people, and here's why I went back to having another day to just polish and saturate that comfort, is I found that most of the people that got certified on the boat, unless they were just naturals, they then became very reliant on their instructor. I found that they will not go again without that instructor or something similar. And it's like, you're just to go back down there to a 40 to 60 foot reefs, you won't go until your instructor is there. That doesn't sound like a certified diver to me.
No, No. And again,
And
I
that's
think,
the majority I see.
right. And I think part of that goes to the instructor of, babying divers. You have to teach them self-reliance, because when you're down there, there's going to be a time when you are diving and you will get away from the group. You'll be looking at something, you'll not be paying attention, the group goes on, and you're going to be away from it. And you're going to have to stop, think for a second, not panic, and figure out what to do. That is something that's severely lacking in the dive industry right now. There's such a, I guess, concern of making sure we get as many people through as possible, that there's less of a focus on making sure this particular diver is comfortable, ready to go, and self-reliant.
Going back to where we're at here is the open water certification. We've heard it a million times. It is your gym membership. It is not
Right.
fitness.
Exactly.
It's a license to learn. Here's how the machines work. Here's what you need to do to get in shape. You showed me a rep on each machine. You got it. You're not fit yet.
I think maybe focus on that as well. And this goes to the instructors. It's like, listen, you have to explain to folks that what they are getting is not a, hey, good job, you're the best diver in the world now. No, hey, good job, you've got a certification that says you can start this process.
You can do this and not die.
Right, exactly. within these parameters.
Right.
And so the goal is get people to where they want to expand beyond that parameters.
Do you think, this reminds me of something.
That was
If you look at your certification, the actual fine print is you are certified to conditions similar to those in which you were trained.
Right.
I don't feel like most students are aware of that fact. They say,
Right.
I'm a certified diver. Conditions similar to what you were trained.
Yeah.
So people will say, I went to 20 feet only and I got
Right.
certified in a quarry. I'm certified open water. That gives me the ability to go on a boat, 60-foot drift. Is that person diving to conditions similar to what they were trained?
That is
Absolutely not.
That is not the student's fault. That is the
Right.
training agency's fault. Because the
Or
training
the
agency,
instructor.
or the instructor, but more the training agency.
It's not
You
front
read-
and center.
Right. When you read the book, it's like, hey, you're going to be certified to 60 feet, as an open water diver, and there's no limitations on that. Now, they do say, oh, make sure it's, within the train. But the truth is, that's not what people hear. When people hear this is what it is, and this is what the book says, that you'll be, once you get this card, you'll be certified to 60 feet. That's the primary thing that they see. And of course, if someone is certified to 20 feet in a lake and they're getting certified so that they can go to Cozumel and go,
90
shore
feet on the
diving,
Santa
90
Rosa
feet. Yeah,
wall.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's hard to make that argument that, oh yeah, we're getting you certified for this, but remember, you can only dive in these conditions. Have fun in Cozumel. There's clearly cognitive dissonance there.
I think there is a missing link between the agency, the instructor, and the student.
Yes.
None of them are on the same page with that.
Right, exactly.
The student doesn't really know.
No, and you can't blame, the student is not at fault here. The student is
Right.
not at fault because knowing the way the books go, knowing the way instructors are, go, that's how they go. And frankly, that's why when I was teaching.
Frankly.
Yes, I said frankly.
What is this, the 50s?
Yeah, that's fine.
And frankly, well, by
Whatever.
Jove, keep going.
All right, I will. Anyway.
Here's a dilemma I had. I had students coming in saying where my shop was a 4-hour drive to Blue Water Reefs, West Palm,
Right. Yeah.
offshore boat diving,
Yeah.
60-foot reefs. And I had people waiting 6 months to get certified because they wanted to get certified in saltwater.
Okay.
I want an ocean certification.
Yeah.
Or I'll have people saying, I want to get certified in Cozumel when you go this fall.
Right.
I want to get certified in. That's, I think, a huge communication problem from the industry to the student, and let me explain why.
I agree with you.
Thank you. That never happens. You knew that I would edit it out because of the sirens. He never says he'll agree with me. He waited for a siren to go by and he said, I agree with you. I'm going to leave it. Sorry about the sirens. To me, it's like when you're getting your open water class, like we were talking about, is just kind of here's how to do it all. You are not good when you leave.
Right.
Nobody is. Nobody. I wasn't.
No.
You weren't. You still aren't.
Whatever.
And it's like learning to drive a car, right? You don't get good your first or fifth time.
Just because you have a license does not mean a 16-year-old is a good driver.
Right, and you can be certified at 10. When you go to learn to drive a car, you're just trying to get the feel down, right? You don't go, hey, I want to drive through a beautiful part of town while I'm learning. I want to go into a back road where there's no cars, an empty field, and learn how to drive the first time.
Sounds like a murder case.
Mike's trying to recover from that last
Oh,
scene.
whatever.
So, but when you're learning to drive a car, you go somewhere where there's no cars around, somewhere quiet, calm, and you can just like pull off, maybe, back roads, whatever. You don't say, hey, I really want to drive through just that beautiful scenic highway while I'm learning to drive. Learn to drive, then take the road trip. get the certification where you're just gonna have maximum time in the water to get comfortable, which is what brought me back to springs and lakes. We're not on a 25, 30-minute drops. It's 2 hour and a half. I mean, you're like double, tripling your bottom time. You can really get it together. It might not be the prettiest dive, but my point is, don't focus on the certification as the event.
Right.
This is the ticket into the theme park. I've seen that even marketed. Get certified and Roatan.
Right.
Get certified, and this is not the place to get certified. This is the place to enjoy yourself.
Agreed.
Your first, and I don't, even the best, the fastest, most comfortable student on those open water checkout dives, they're gonna burn through their air quick. They're gonna be fiddling with a lot of stuff, kind of all over the place. They're gonna miss most of the animals. That's an interesting thing. New divers, you didn't see the turtle that swam through everybody? And you're like,
No, nobody saw it.
It's
Tunnel
very,
vision, yes.
very tunnel vision. So I've watched people try and bring their GoPro, and they're getting ready to jump off, and they just go, and they just put it down.
You don't bring that on the first time.
No, and it's because they're not comfortable.
All right, so here's where I'm going to push back just a little bit. That only works if the instructor is very clear about the fact of what you are doing.
So
Yeah.
you had a different experience.
I did. I got checked out in a river. It sucked. It was cold. I didn't see much. The visibility's okay, but it didn't matter because there was a bunch of weeds and stuff. Like you couldn't. It was not a great experience. Luckily, my next dives were in Australia. I was getting certified because I was doing an exchange program to Australia. If I hadn't had that coming up, I don't know that I would have dove again after that. So there's kind of a trade-off, and this is kind of where I'm pushing back a little bit. Yes, you want on your checkout dives something that will give you the ability to relax and get your skills right and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, for people who are like there, who want to go see something and they go, well, this sucks. This isn't what I wanted to do.
You're saying if it's not fun enough or
Then
it's
you may
not
not come
exciting
back.
enough, it
Right.
doesn't quite light that fire.
Right, and you're not coming back because you're like, well, that wasn't worth it. And so I think there's kind of probably somewhere in between there.
Well, let me pitch a solution to you. This is something I only recently started doing with when I teach friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a class coming up right now, and we're doing all of our certifications in the springs. $5 car to get in, they're less than an hour away, and it's basically unlimited bottom time. Get comfortable. So you're certified after that. That's all you ever want to do again? Cool, here's your card. The weekend after, we baked it into the class. Also keeps the cost down for some people a little bit.
Yeah.
So yes, it costs a little bit more money, but the weekend after, we are doing a boat dive down in West Palm on the reefs. So hey, you're already certified, but the weekend after, if you want to do boat diving, come with us. We'll still treat you like a student. You won't really be, but you kind of will be. Up to you kind of how tight you want to be. But come with us. We'll show you everything just as if it was a checkout dive. You'll have a little bit more comfort. You won't have that pressure of I have to do this, and it'll be beautiful. Hopefully.
It's not a bad way to do it. Another option.
So we just capped
yeah,
it
go ahead.
as an
I thought you
option,
were done 'cause you're still
and
talking
then
about
that gives us the chance to have this conversation. Well, I was saying though, you're saying there's a disconnect there,
Right.
of you don't want to short people out by it being too intense, but on the flip side, by doing the simple class in the springs and lakes and being certified there, but then having that beautiful tropical dive the weekend or 2 weeks after on a boat, that gives them that option. Most of them are going to be excited and want to do it. Or maybe if it wasn't exciting enough, they'll say, you know what, I am going to do that thing, but at least they're comfortable. And it gives us a chance to have that conversation on the difference,
Right.
which I think is really the root of the problem.
Right. No, I agree. There's a lot of options, but it is something that an instructor needs to think about and needs to put across to their students. If they're going to do it lake or in a spring or in a confined area like that, they need to explain to them like, look, this isn't as good as it gets. We're in here for a very specific purpose for learning, but it gets much better, when you get out in the ocean. On the other hand, if your option is to go out in the ocean or go out on a boat or something like that, and that's the first time you're going to do, you also need to explain to your students that, look, this is a little bit rougher than what it usually is. This is not how all diving is. And if you have a great day, you don't have to explain any of that because it's going to go awesome.
Right.
But if you don't have a great day, if you have some waves, if you have, if it gets blown out or something, you explain, look, there's other options. If you like the idea of diving but don't really care about seeing the animals, then springs are great. You still get that feeling of floating, the three-dimensional, all the kind of cool stuff that comes with diving.
In summary, so there's definitely a pro and con to going and doing like an ocean dive for your checkout dive.
Right.
It can incite excitement, but it can also short them out if it doesn't go well or they just weren't quite as comfortable as everybody else.
Right.
The anxiety gets up, seasick, whatever. What would you like to see change that would maybe fix this disconnect of so focused on the certification dive and where it is and where it's going, not looking at all the dives that will be so much better after?
I think this goes back to two things. Number one, instructors, and maybe the organizations too, generally need to explain better that a open water certification is just your driver's license. That's all it is. You're just getting your driver's license and you are a new driver. You want to take it easy initially. The other thing that I think is really important, shops, instructors, whatever, need to focus on training the student instead of the students as a whole. Instead of getting through as many students as they can, get the students comfortable, explain to them what this is, explain to them what the certification is, and encourage them to come back and say, listen, we're gonna be there for you. We go on dive trips, come with us. We'll take you, it'll be a good time. You know, we'll take you on the boat. You haven't done a boat dive yet? We'll go do a boat dive with you. You haven't done a spring yet? Let's go to a spring.
Why do you think most of the public sees scuba? Anytime, I don't know about you, but if I go, it doesn't matter, at dinner table somewhere, grocery store, the first question is certification. Everyone's minds are wrapped around, when they see us out diving and we're not doing a class, everyone assumes that, so what kind of training are you guys doing? What kind of class are you guys taking? There's so much focus on that. That really is what, 2 weekends usually, or 4 days, or whatever it is. And I think the ball gets dropped right after. Come get certified here, get certified there. Here's where your dive is, certified, certified, certified. It should be the dive after.
Agreed.
The statistics have it at 6 dives after open water, there's a 50% reduction in incident rate.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That comes from Dan.
Okay. Who's Dan?
You know who Dan is.
No,
It's a real statistic.
I know who Dan is. Divers Alert Network, we're good. Yeah.
So it's about 6 dives. So that's at least 3 trips on average.
Right.
I don't remember but I think it's within 6 months or a year.
And I'm betting once you get those 6 dives in within the year, you're probably hooked. Like at
Yeah.
that point, you realize, because you started to get comfortable, you started to enjoy it, you started to actually see stuff because you're not so much tunnel vision there.
Yeah, you're just sitting there looking at your
Right.
gauge,
Looking at your gauge
and
all
fiddling
that,
with
yeah.
everything.
So you
Yeah.
probably started to enjoy it and you're like, this is a lot of fun and I'm actually enjoying it and I can kind of relax a little bit on the dives. My guess is once you get those 6 dives in, you probably become a diver for life and dive, relatively regularly, at least a few times a year.
You don't need data to back that up. You've got experience in what you've seen. I would back that. I would second that. If they go 6 times,
Yeah.
they're divers for life. But if you don't get those couple of dives after that certification,
Yeah, you're not going to keep it up.
Yeah, and you'll lose it and you'll be right back to square one.
Yep.
Focus on after the certification.
Right, yeah. The certification is to get you to go have fun. The certification is the driver's license test where you got to go. You're not planning on having fun with a guy sitting next to you while you're, parking in a parking lot or driving. That's to get the certification.
Because you're right, there's an excitement that just doesn't come in the lakes and springs that you get from going out on a boat and then coming back. There's just that excitement. There's nothing better than that.
Right.
I'll give you that. What I found to keep that excitement so that, hey, you got it, now let's go to the boat, is the social activity that surrounded it and after. Like we brought food, or we had this restaurant nearby. We're like, hey, make sure to save some time for that. We're all gonna go. We got a big table. We made it fun. We started talking up the dive. Hey, now you know what you're doing and you're gonna love going down. But it was really by making sure everyone felt like they were part of it, keep the excitement up, have that social activity to bring everybody together. Because even if the dive wasn't spectacular, if you're having a good time, I mean, who wouldn't want more?
Right, and there's always something to talk about after a dive. It doesn't matter if it's a crappy dive, you can talk about how crappy the dive was. If it was you saw a turtle, the only thing we saw was that turtle. So even griping about it can sometimes be a lot of fun after, if it was bad viz and all this, oh man, that was terrible viz and all. There's this one time we went down there, we had 100-foot viz and all, and so even the griping about it can be a good thing.
Do you think that the getting together after the dive might be probably the most memorable, best part?
No.
I think it is.
Not if you saw like a great white or something.
You don't want to sit around and talk about it and share those photos?
Yeah,
and,
but
oh
it's
my God.
hard to say that's the best part.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the show. I just want to say I appreciate your efforts, but you don't have to send us a treasure chest full of gold, unless you actually have one. But you can always drop a 5-star review or even go to sweetwaterscuba.com to support our channel with a small contribution, or become a member, which gains access to all the interviews uncensored and everything in one hub, and especially my personal online courses where I share all my experience and knowledge with you so you can take what I've learned and run with it. Plus, we send our members custom art postcards that actually show up to your physical mailbox every every month. Any and all forms of support are appreciated, and at the end of the day, I'm just glad you're here. Hope to see you underwater soon.